when it feels like life is just a roller coaster, it can be so tiring, can't it? Sometimes we feel that every day is a war of attrition on our emotions as we have to deal with the demands of everyday life. And sometimes it can be that there are seasons of our life when we just seem to lurch from crisis to peace in our hearts and then back to crisis again. It can feel like a roller coaster, and when it does, it is so exhausting, isn't it? I was going to say, how do we cope when life is like that? But we don't want to just cope, do we? We want to do more than that. We want to sort of escape the instability, and we want to discover another way of living, don't we? A better way of living than that. And today I want to give you what I think is actually the secret to discovering stability in our lives. Now, forgive me, I'm going to have to hold on to my hat quite literally because a storm is coming today to the UK. And the wind is really picking up. So I hope you can hear me okay. And if my hat flies off halfway through, then forgive me for that. I know what it is like to live on a roller coaster. My life as a priest is sometimes like that. My days can be really weird. I can perhaps in the morning be at a school, maybe doing a school assembly or in a class, and really enjoying time with the kids, having a fun, happy time. And then within the next hour, I'm visiting somebody at home who is sick. And then I have to go home, maybe write a sermon, and in the afternoon, maybe then go and do a hospital visit and visit somebody who may be dying, sit with them as they're dying sometimes. Then come home, grab some dinner, and then in the evening do a wedding visit or a baptism visit or something like that. And sometimes my days can be such a roller coaster of emotions. And you think, no wonder it can be so tiring. Maybe you have days like that as well. And then not just the range of emotions in a day, but also seasons in our life that can be a real roller coaster as well. I think for me, probably the most intense period like that was when my daughter was born many years ago. And we had sort of 6 months of joy and happiness with my new daughter. And then within 6 months, my wife was diagnosed with cancer. And the world just fell apart for me at that point. And the next 7 years I spent as a carer and as a father to a young daughter. And that whole period was a roller coaster of emotions, as you can imagine. So, yeah, maybe you've got similar stories in your own life as well. And when I think about living with that sort of roller coaster lifestyle that so many of us are going through, I find the Christmas story actually to be really helpful, because in the run-up to Christmas, we have all the joy and the wonder of the Christmas story, don't we? We focus on the angels, and we focus on the wise men coming and the shepherds and the announcement to Mary that she is going to give birth to the Messiah. And the run-up to Christmas is all about the joy and the wonder of the season. But then it turns really dark really quickly, because straight away after Christmas, we're then into the story of the Holy Family having to flee as refugees to Egypt. And we are into the story of the slaughter of the innocents as Herod seeks to kill the Christ child. I remember having the privilege of going to the place in Israel where the innocent children of Bethlehem were buried. And do you know what struck me the most? Was how few graves there were there. I can't remember exactly how many, but maybe 8, 10, 12. And I was expecting hundreds of graves, but there weren't. Very, very few indeed. But actually, the small number of the graves, the small number of the innocents who were killed under Herod at that time, made it all the more profound for me, because I realised that, of course, Bethlehem would have been a little tiny village and everybody would have known everybody, and all the families would have been kind of intertwined together, and the loss of these children would have been so profound and so immense in such a small, tight-knit community. Anyway, that's a bit of an aside. It just kind of came to mind as I was talking about it. But yeah, so the Christmas story, you've got the peace and the awe and the wonder on one side of the story. And then you've got chaos and suffering and confusion on the other side of the story. And life can be like that, can't it? We can just be going along peacefully, enjoying life, and then all of a sudden chaos and confusion hits. But what strikes me, and why I think that Christmas is so useful and so important, is that in between the joy and the wonder on the one side, and the chaos and the confusion and the suffering on the other, in between is the story of the Christ child. Jesus in a manger is right there in the middle between the two. And the story pivots around Christ in the manger. And for me, there's something about the roller coaster of life being bearable. Maybe that's too much of a word, I don't know. But there's something about the roller coaster of life anyway, that we navigate it. Maybe I should say that. We can navigate it better if we put Jesus at the centre of the story of our life. Jesus is not an add-on to our lives. Our faith in Jesus is not just another activity that we undertake. If we hold our faith in Jesus at the very centre of our lives, then that gives us the perspective and the resilience to navigate the roller coaster nature of life. And Jesus then becomes our point of stability. Now, I think it's important to mention here that there is a difference between putting Jesus at the centre of our lives and putting church activity at the centre of our lives. The two things are not the same. Sometimes we can confuse our faith in Jesus with busyness at church. They are not the same thing and need to be held separate. And that is the case certainly for me as a priest, because, you know, I do Jesus for a living. Do you know what I mean? And there's a temptation for me to think that the busier I am at church, the more activities I've got going on, then the more faithful I am being to Jesus. But that's not the case. The two things are very, very separate. And we need to make sure that it is Jesus that we are putting at the centre of our lives, rather than busyness in church. And if we put Jesus at the very centre of our lives, then it prevents us from being tossed around on the storms of life. If we don't have Jesus at the centre of our lives, then we just get thrown around by all of the chaos and the confusion that life throws at us. So how do we do that? How do we put Jesus at the centre? Well, I think it's primarily about building in still points into the daily routine that we live out. We put Jesus at the centre of our lives by putting into our daily routines prayer and Bible study and meditation on the cross and all the things that draw us closer to him. Now, I'm going to say something quite hard to you right now, because you may say to me, well, Steve, it all sounds very good and ideal, but I don't have time to spend in prayer and Bible study every day. I can't focus on that. I've got a busy life. You might have family commitments, you might have work commitments or whatever it is. And you might say to me, I'm finding it really hard. I'm struggling to find the time to do it. Well, I know it's going to sound harsh, and I'm sorry if this sounds a little bit harsh, but you do have time. You have 24 hours in the day, just like I've got 24 hours a day in a day, just like everyone else has. And you do have time. The question is it going to be a priority for you? Now, that's a different question. You've got time, but is it going to be a priority? So I might say, for example, well, I want to learn to speak Mandarin, but I don't have time to learn. Well, I do have time to learn. It just might not be a priority for me. When I look at, and that's okay, actually, that's all right. When I look at my day, I might have a lie-in a little bit in the morning, or in the evening, I might spend a couple of hours watching Netflix or whatever. The time is there. It's just that I'm choosing to prioritize watching Netflix over and above learning Mandarin. Do you see what I mean? And it's okay for me to do that. I'm not saying it's not. But rather than just saying, I don't have time to learn Mandarin, what I should say is, I've got time to learn it. It's just not a priority for me. So when it comes to putting Jesus at the centre of our lives, you can say to me, you don't have time to spend hours in prayer and hours in Bible study each day. I would say to you, yes, you do. It just might not be the priority for you. And that's the question that you need to think about. What are your priorities in life? So what is the secret then to stability in the roller coaster of life? Well, I think it's putting Jesus at the centre. Putting Jesus at the centre of everything and building daily routines whereby prayer and Bible study and just sitting and being with God is our priority. And then we build the rest of life around that. So in reality, you and I can't influence what happens to us in life. A lot of life just gets thrown at us, doesn't it? Bad things happen, crises happen, busy times happen at work, emergencies happen within our families, and so on and so forth. So we can't influence, to a large extent, what happens to us. But we can determine our response. We can determine, to a large extent, the impact that the roller coaster nature of life has on us. Because we've got choices. And you and I are not victims of circumstance. We have got a choice. We can either go through the difficulties of life on our own, stressed and anxious, or we can go through the difficulties of life relying on the power of God as the strength within us. I know which I will choose. What about you? You are not a victim of circumstance. You have a choice as to how you will respond. So the Christmas story then has Jesus at the very centre. Wow. I hope that gust of wind hasn't knocked out the volume too much. Yeah, Jesus is at the very centre. Jesus in the manger stands between the joy and the wonder of the angels and the shepherds and the wise men, and the chaos and the confusion of the flight to Egypt and the slaughter of the innocents. Jesus at the centre of the story makes sense of both the joy and the chaos. And if you put Jesus at the centre of your life, then it will make sense of the roller coaster nature of all you go through. It won't stop the roller coaster nature, but it will give you the perspective you need and the ability to stay focused and to still enjoy life in all its fullness and know the joy of God, even when the circumstances of life gets difficult. I think I'm going to end it there because I'm about to get blown away and lose my hat. So thanks for being with me today. I'll catch up with you again tomorrow. Take care. Bye-bye.